Have you ever felt a pull? A whisper from a place that isn't quite here? A longing for something more than the everyday? It's a feeling as old as storytelling itself. A hunger for the impossible. We are, at our core, creatures of myth. Before history was written, before cities were built, there were stories. Stories of gods and monsters, of heroes and villains, of worlds shimmering with magic. And those stories didn't just vanish. They evolved. They branched. They became fantasy. But fantasy isn't just dragons and elves, though those certainly have their place. It's a vast, breathtaking landscape of imagination, a kaleidoscope of worlds reflecting our deepest hopes and darkest fears. It's a conversation with the what if that lives within us all. What if magic was real? What if good and evil weren't simple choices? What if you were the one chosen to save a kingdom? Let's begin at the summit with high fantasy. Think of it as the grand cathedral of the genre. Vast, imposing, meticulously crafted. J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth is the blueprint, a fully realized world with its own languages, histories, and mythologies. These are stories where the fate of everything hangs in the balance. Wars are fought for the soul of the world. Heroes rise and fall. It's a commitment, an immersion, a journey to a place utterly unlike our own. It asks, what does it mean to be truly good in a world consumed by darkness? But not all fantasy seeks to build entire worlds from scratch. Sometimes the magic whispers into our world. That's where we find low fantasy. Imagine a familiar city street, but with secrets hidden in the shadows. Magic isn't commonplace. It's a rare, dangerous thing. George R.R. Martin's Westeros in A Song of Ice and Fire feels brutally real, doesn't it? Political machinations, betrayals, and the relentless pursuit of power with magic simmering beneath the surface, a subtle, unsettling force. Low fantasy doesn't ask, what if? It asks, what if this happened here? What if the extraordinary disrupted the ordinary? What if the things we believe to be true were lies? Now picture a world that looks a bit like ours, but twisted. Broken. Controlled. Where freedom is a memory and hope is a dangerous luxury. That's the realm of dystopian fantasy. Samantha Shannon's The Bone season exemplifies this. A chilling vision of a future where clairvoyance is feared and controlled by a ruthless regime. It's a genre born from our anxieties, a warning wrapped in a fantastical cloak. It asks, what happens when power is absolute? What price are we willing to pay for freedom? And what does it truly mean to be human when everything is stripped away? Then there's something softer. Something that feels like a dream you can almost touch. Magical realism. This isn't about escaping to another world. It's about seeing the magic within our own. Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude is a masterclass. Characters ascend to heaven during laundry. Yellow butterflies herald the arrival of love. These aren't anomalies to be explained, they simply are. It's a reflection of cultures where the boundary between the real and the supernatural is fluid. Magical realism doesn't try to convince you of magic, it invites you to believe in it. It asks, what if the world isn't quite as logical as we think? What if beauty and sorrow are intertwined? What if the stories we tell shape our reality? But what happens when you strip away the world building and focus on the raw, visceral thrill of adventure? You get sword and sorcery. This is pure adrenaline. Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian, muscle, steel, and cunning. It's about survival, about facing down monsters and outsmarting sorcerers. These stories are often smaller in scope than epic fantasy, more focused on individual heroism. It's a primal, exhilarating experience. It asks, what does it take to survive in a brutal world? What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve your goals? And what does it mean to be truly free? And as our world became increasingly urbanized, fantasy followed. Urban fantasy brings the supernatural to our cities. Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files is a perfect example, a wizard working as a private investigator in modern-day Chicago. It's about blending the mundane and the magical, about hiding in plain sight. It's about seeing the darkness beneath the neon lights. It asks, what if magic was real but hidden? What if monsters walked among us? And how would we cope with the knowledge that everything we thought we knew was a lie? Of course, where there's magic, there's often love. Paranormal romance blends the thrill of the supernatural with the yearning for connection. Think vampires, werewolves, witches, and the humans who dare to love them. Stephanie Meyer's Twilight sparked a phenomenon, exploring the complexities of forbidden love and the dangers of a world beyond our own. It asks, could you love someone who is fundamentally different from you? What sacrifices would you make for love? And can love truly conquer all, even the darkness? But fantasy isn't always about hope and heroism. Sometimes it's about the darkness within. Dark fantasy delves into the shadows, exploring morally ambiguous characters and terrifying worlds. Joe Abercrombie's The Blade itself is a bleak, brutal masterpiece. It's about flawed heroes, desperate choices, and the consequences of power. It asks, what happens when good intentions lead to terrible outcomes? What are the limits of morality? And can anyone truly be saved? Push that darkness further, embrace the cynicism, and you arrive at grimdark fantasy. Mark Lawrence's Prince of Thorns embodies this, a world where heroes are rare and villains are commonplace. It's a relentless, unforgiving landscape where survival is paramount. It asks, what would you do to survive? How far would you go to achieve your goals? And is there any such thing as true justice? But fantasy isn't just about grand conflicts and epic quests. It can also be about whispers of forgotten lore and the wisdom of generations. Fables are short, symbolic stories that convey timeless truths. Aesop's tales, The Tortoise and the Hare, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, are perfect examples. These stories aren't about escaping reality, they're about understanding it. They ask, what lessons can we learn from the past? What qualities make us truly human? And what is the meaning of life? And then there are the stories that have been told and retold for centuries. Fairy tales, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. These are the stories of our childhood, filled with magic, wonder, and the promise of a happily ever after. They're about good versus evil, about courage and kindness, and about the transformative power of love. They ask, what happens when dreams come true? What is the value of perseverance? And what is the true meaning of happiness? Fantasy can even take on the trappings of modern heroism. Superhero fantasy merges the power of fantastical abilities with the responsibility of defending the innocent. Brandon Sanderson's Steelheart reimagines a world ruled by superpowered villains and the rebels who dare to fight back. It asks, what does it mean to be a hero? How do you use power responsibly? And what sacrifices are worth making to save the world? Sometimes, fantasy isn't about quests at all. Fantasy of manners focuses on social intrigue, court politics, and the delicate dance of relationships. Ellen Kushner's Swordspoint is a perfect example, a world of duels, scandals, and forbidden romance. It asks, what is the price of power? How do you navigate the complexities of social life? And what is the true meaning of loyalty? Imagine doorways opening, leading to countless other worlds. That's cross-world fantasy. C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia is a classic example. Children stumbling through a wardrobe into a land of talking animals and epic battles. It asks, what if there were other worlds out there? What would you do if you were transported to a different reality? And what would you learn about yourself along the way? And then there's the beautiful fusion of technology and magic. Steampunk fantasy combines the aesthetics of the Victorian era with fantastical elements. Think gears, airships, and clockwork creations powered by magic. Philip Reeve's Mortal Engines is a prime example, a world where cities roam the landscape on massive, mobile platforms. It asks, what if technology and magic were intertwined? What would a world powered by steam and ambition look like? And what is the cost of progress? The legends of King Arthur continue to inspire. Arthurian fantasy reimagines the tales of Camelot, Merlin, and the Knights of the Round Table. T.A. White's The Once and Future King is a timeless retelling, exploring the complexities of leadership and the tragedy of lost ideals. It asks, what does it mean to be a king? What is the nature of chivalry? And is it possible to create a perfect society? And finally, we have the breathtaking convergence of science and magic. Sci-fi fantasy blends the futuristic technology of science fiction with the mystical elements of fantasy. Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern is a landmark example, a world where humans and dragons work together to defend against a deadly threat from space. It asks, what if science and magic were two sides of the same coin? What would happen if we discovered that the universe is far stranger than we ever imagined? And what is the future of humanity? So as you can see, fantasy isn't a single genre. It's a universe of possibilities. It's a reflection of our hopes, our fears, and our endless capacity for imagination. It's a place where anything can happen, and often does. But more than anything, fantasy reminds us that stories matter. They shape our beliefs, inspire our dreams, and connect us to something larger than ourselves. So the next time you feel that pull, that whisper from another world, embrace it. Open a book, close your eyes, and let your imagination soar. Because within those pages, within those worlds, lies the power to transform not just the story, but you.